achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're breaking down the upcoming UFC Fight Night 51, which will take place on Fight Pass, and feature a heavyweight rematch in the main event as Antonio Bigfoot Silva takes on the Pitbull, Andrei Arlovski. I'll be giving you my 6 main card predictions for the September 13th event. All of my preliminary breakdowns will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Now, as far as kamikazeoverdrive.net is concerned, and the timing of this video, I'm a little late and I apologize. I haven't updated much. Over the weekend we had a major storm in my where I live, and we had roughly 8 inches of water get into my basement, which was very unfortunate, and I pretty much missed the entire event, the UFC Fight Night 50. It wasn't a good showing on my part. I'm pretty disappointed overall. I did pick the Matt Mitrione upset, and I had a couple fights, like for example Michael Chiesa seemed to be doing okay until he got stopped with the cut. And Justin Scoggins was doing pretty decent as well. And I thought Chris Camozzi deserved the win. So there's some fights there that could have gone my way and improved my record significantly. Either way, with the modern day UFC, if you struggle one weekend, you're only 6-7 days away from another event. And that's what we're looking at here. As always, my bet packs will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. You can purchase them. I'm only one show removed from winning $3,600. Or at least that's what the parlay is produced, having a massive event at UFC 177. Also, the panels predictions will be available. You can check those out as well. We've got 6 main card fights. Let's get to the first one. Our first fight of the night takes place in the UFC's women's bantamweight division. It's the number 10th ranked Jessica Andrade with a record of 11-3-0 takes on injury replacement undefeated 10-0 Larissa Pacheco. I'm sure I'm butchering that name, and I apologize. I could not find any good footage of her, how to pronounce her name. This was originally set up as Andrade against Valerie Letourneau, and Letourneau had to pull out like a number of fights in this card have been altered by injuries. Pacheco, she's very young. She's just 20 years of age. This is her official promotional debut. She's undefeated. Her last 3 fights coming into the Jungle Fight banner, and she won the title in that promotion. But that's pretty significant. Jungle Fights is a pretty big organization out of Brazil. But taking a quick look, her last 4 opponents had a combined record of 7 wins and 4 losses. So yes, it's above 500, but for 4 fighters, that's not a lot of total wins. Now, Pacheco, all 10 of her wins have been finishes. 6 wins by knockout, 4 wins by submission. So she is a finishing machine. She will stand and trade. She has a very solid straight left and a nice little uppercut she'll work in, right leg body kick that she'll throw as well. She likes to stalk her opponents and block them down with strikes. She's going to be 5 inches taller than Andrade, and she should have a length advantage and look to try and catch Jessica as she comes forward. She'll also work in the clinch with knees. She's not overly smooth or technical, but she still can get the job done with simple brute force. On the negative side, she can be hit during exchanges. She holds her chin up, and she will slow down tremendously. Her hands start to drop, and she gets a little bit sloppy. Even when she's fresh, there's a lot of technical gaps in her striking, and she has a tendency to take a strike to, take 3 or 4 strikes to try and land one, and that's not an exchange you want to have against Andrade. On the mat, she will attack off her back. She really likes arm bars, will go for them. Nice variety of submission wins overall, decent submission defense as well. She needs to watch her neck, as we know Andrade has that guillotine that she really likes. In one of her most recent fights, she did a nice job actually surviving a guillotine, advancing to mount, and then hitting an arm bar, so she's very scrappy on the mat. But a negative thing for her grappling as well, she will give up position, looking for submissions continually. Submission before position, which if you hit it, that's fantastic, but if you don't, that's going to cost you in the long run. Overall, she's very aggressive, she's multifaceted, but she's still incredibly raw and unpolished. For Andrade, she found her stride in the UFC so after a pretty back-and-forth opening round against Liz Carmouche. She lost that fight. She then turned it on and mauled Rosie Saxton and simply outworked Raquel Pennington, a questionable split decision that should have been a unanimous decision as far as I'm concerned. She has been stopped twice, Liz Carmouche, and then once very early in her career. Overall, Andrade has faced far better competition both in the UFC and out than her opponent in this fight. Averages 7.3 strikes landed per minute, which is a massive work rate. She throws punches, elbows, kicks, knees, nice variety of striking techniques. Keeps her chin tucked and her hands up, so she's much more technically sound than her opponent here. Throws some very hard leg kicks and can throw hard volume combinations, mainly hooks, and just really outworks and outlands her opponent. Some nice judo throws, which she put on display in her last fight for takedowns. 5 submission wins overall, solid top control as well. She's going to have the shorter stature, which is going to allow her to get her hips under her opponent and should allow her to put her on the mat. As I said, she likes that guillotine choke. 4 of her 5 wins have come by guillotine. She threatened against Liz Carmouche in that matchup. She needs to be very careful not to lose position, though, when she's going for it and let her opponent get on top. Now, for Larissa Pacheco, can't afford to trade punches with Andrade. I've already mentioned that, or give up position looking for submissions, which are 2 things she tends to do and they've worked out against lower level competition. I just don't see them working out in her favor here. Andrade is simply more refined. I expect she's going to break her opponent down with the pace and impact of her strikes. She still needs to be very careful, though, during those exchanges and on the mat, both on the mat and striking, because she can get caught, and that's absolutely a real possibility against Larissa Pacheco. But my prediction is Jessica Andrade to defeat Larissa Pacheco by decision. We stick with the bantamweights. We move over to the men's side of the scale as Yuri Alcantara, with a record of 30 wins, 5 losses, and no draws, along with 1 no contest, battles Russell Doane, who's currently sitting with a record of 14 wins and 3 defeats. Now, Alcantara is one of the most underrated fighters in the division. There's no question in that, and he's a massive bantamweight coming down, and has former featherweight and actually former lightweight as well. Doane's coming with a very controversial win, and this is a big step up for him. He fought Leandro in his debut, coming off that win over Marcus Brimmage's last fight. He also fought guys Papazian and Tanaka in pre-UFC, who are both guys with a little better-known names. For Alcantara, massive finishing rate, incredibly impressive. 13 wins by knockout and 12 submissions overall, versus just 5 decisions. So it shows how dangerous this individual is. He submitted Francisco Trinaldo, who's a massive lightweight. Alcantara's fighting 135, so it shows how technically sound he is and how capable he is. And he also knocked out Ricardo Lamas, a top contender, as a featherweight. He has excellent striking. He limits his opponents to under 2 strikes per minute, which is a pretty good defensive game. He has serious power, throws very hard, good leg kicks, and a nice variety of attack overall. I really like his stepping knee, and he has some nice elbow strikes that are very dangerous as well that he will work in. He's coming off a vicious knockout of Von Lee. He also stopped Santos at 135, and so far his power is translated fairly well. For Doane, his decent striking against Issa. He continually landed a nice overhand right, which he'll look to key on here. 6 knockouts overall, including KOing Jared Papazian with a nice brutal elbow strike. So Papazian's a tough dude, so it's not easy to put him down. Doane has some pretty good low kicks and a stepping knee as well he'll look to incorporate, but he was getting hammered by low kicks by Marcus Brimage. It was clearly hurting him. I thought it was the most significant part of the fight, and that's something he didn't change anything up, or didn't change enough up, and kept taking those shots, and he can't allow a guy like Yuri Alcantara to routinely get off and land shots like he was with Brimage. Now, Doane uses takedowns and grappling to overcome the striking of Brimage in that matchup. I don't think that's going to be an option here against a guy like Alcantara. Doane does have 5 wins by submission, and in his debut he handled himself extremely well against an accomplished BJJ player in Issa. He survived an early sub attempt, orchestrated a couple of sweeps in that matchup, and eventually submitted Issa, put him to sleep with the triangle, which is very impressive and a nice notch in his belt, but I just don't see that happening against a well-rounded and MMA veteran like Alcantara. But Doane does have excellent hips, very strong and close. He outworked Brimage on the mat, which is, coming down from 145, Brimage is a pretty strong dude. But Alcantara, he's had trouble with exceptionally strong grapplers. We saw Hawker Diaz at featherweight take control of him. Uriah Faber out-grappled him. And even Wilson Hayes gave him some trouble. But again, those guys are at a whole nother level than Russell Doane as far as the grappling is concerned. Hayes took him down several times, showed solid top control, and could have won that fight on the judges' cards as far as I was concerned. But on the positive side, Alcantara is a BJ black belt, exceptionally dangerous grappler, decent takedown game as well, despite averaging just under 2 takedowns per fight, but an 83% completion rate. He beat Felipe Arantes with takedowns in his debut, and Arantes is a big featherweight. He's dangerous if you put him on his back, solid top control. He will attack arms. 7 to 12 submission wins are some form of arm bar. For Doane, he isn't afraid to go to the ground, which cost him against Tanaka back in PX, I can't remember what organization it was. Nonetheless, Alcantara should be better everywhere. And you can't underestimate Doane, especially if Alcantara slows down, which he has in the past. But my prediction is Yuri Alcantara to defeat Russell Doane by knockout. We slide up the scale to the UFC's welterweight division as Santiago Ponzinibbio, 19-2-0, battles 24-7-0 injury replacement Wendell Oliveira. Again, I'm apologizing to Santiago, as I'm probably mispronouncing his name. Wendell Oliveira is filling in for Sergio Moraes, who had to pull out due to injury. For Ponzinibbio, 10-month layoff after a loss in his debut. Looking at Oliveira, winner of 18 of his last 19, so pretty darn impressive. There are 11 knockouts and 3 submissions on his career, 2 KOs and 4 sub losses, so he has been stopped before several times. Interestingly enough, the guy's 10-0 when he goes down the judges' scorecards, which is pretty solid. He knows how to outwork guys and doesn't have to stop them simply to beat them. On his career, he's fought a couple of current Brazilians who are in the UFC with not a lot of great results, which tells us he's maybe he struggles a little bit when he takes that next step up in competition. As a striker, he's very solid. He keeps his hands up, nice tie clinch and knees, hard leg kicks, massive jumping knee knock at one of his most recent bouts. Very explosive overall. He can swing a little bit wildly when pressure, but he hits very hard. He does like the counter strike, tries to catch his opponents when coming forward, which I think that's going to show up in this matchup. He doesn't use enough movement when attacking, which can cost him a little bit for an opponent against a very technical striker, which isn't maybe the case here. He can grapple, but overall he does prefer to keep it standing. Opponents do try to take him down and grapple with him and kind of wear him out and outdo him there. As a result, he'll use a little bit of a low stance and a hard sprawl to try and shut that down. For Ponzinibbio, loving that name. 10 wins by knockout, 6 submissions overall. So he's certainly capable in multiple facets of the game. He has power, but his striking looked very awkward against Ryan LaFleur in his debut and unpolished overall. He looked sloppy when he was fresh and struggled more as he slowed down in that matchup. LaFleur tired, but so did Santiago, and it certainly did not look like a good refined striking onslaught. But he has had 10 months to try and clean some stuff out. In that matchup, he was outlanded extremely in a one-sided affair, 109-32. He was also taken down 5 times, and he struggled to adjust to his opponent's takedowns or top game, and really didn't have an answer for what LaFleur was showing him. I expect he's going to look to grapple with Oliveira here to either set up a submission or simply wear him down and score points with the judges. If he can find success with his grappling, he's going to, if he can't find success with his grappling, I think he's going to struggle with the striking aspects of it, because I think Oliveira is simply more refined and a more capable striker. His wild approach and the way he swings and throws, I think it leaves openings for counter strikes. I think Wendell Oliveira has the better gas tank, and I think Oliveira is going to catch up. So my prediction is Wendell Oliveira to defeat Santiago Ponzinibbio by knockout. In a battle of Ultimate Fighter champions, we move to the UFC's lightweight divisions. Leonardo Santos, 12-4-1, battles Efrain Escudero, the record of 19-5-0. Escudero was actually filling in on short notice as an injury replacement, but the thing was he was prepping to face Francisco Trinaldo in the undercard of this event in his return to the UFC. So certainly he should be in shape and condition for this matchup. This is actually, as I mentioned, a battle of Ultimate Fighter winners, but some, more than some, a lot of the shine has come off Escudero's, considering this is his 3rd run with the UFC. Taking a quick look at his career so far, he's been cut from the UFC twice. He's 3-4 overall in the promotion with 3 straight losses. Since his last cut, he did go 4-3, so he doesn't have an outstanding record, but he's a name that they picked back up to fight in this card. We'll see how he does and how long he sticks around this time. For Santos, he's coming off a controversial draw with Norman Park. Park would have won the fight, but a very hasty call by the official. I don't know what he was thinking here. He took a point away from Park in that matchup after Park grabbed the shorts. Yes, it was a blatant shorts grab, but a warning was definitely enough. Not a point, and that cost him there. Taking a look at both these guys, they have big submission numbers. Santos 8-0 in fights ended by submission. Escudero 12-2. Escudero, though, hasn't submitted anyone since 2011, which came back at Bellator 55. For Santos, he won by submission his UFC debut, so he certainly has pulled off more recent submissions overall in his career. Escudero appears to be getting away from the grappling side of things. Escudero, he should have the better wrestling overall, but over his career so far, he seems to have trouble with really good grapplers. In all 4 of his UFC losses, he has given up 9 takedowns and scored exactly 0. He was submitted by Charles Oliveira and Evan Dunham in 2 of his losses. Conversely, he's had a lot of success. When his takedown game gets going, if he grapple his opponent, that's when he's successful. He landed 7 takedowns against Felipe Nova in his tournament final win. He landed a couple takedowns against Cole Miller and put him on his back in that matchup. So that shows the contrast of how he carries himself as far as his wrestling is concerned. For Santos, in his takedown department, he went over 5 against Norman Park and 1-7 in the Ultimate Fighter final. So his wrestling isn't that strong, but he's working out of a very good camp in Nova União, and I expect to see an improvement in his offensive wrestling, as they have some pretty strong wrestlers there coming out of Brazil. Now, Santos is a world-class BJJ player. He may only need one opportunity, and that's something to keep in mind here. If he can take you down, he's going to look for a submission and look to control you. He really likes those chokes. 5 arm triangle chokes, 2 rear naked chokes, and 1 triangle choke for his career. So he really likes to look for chokes in his opponents. On the feet, though, neither man is known for their knockouts. Santos 1 win, 1 loss in that category. Escudero 2-0. He did stop Cole Miller, and he's coming off a TKO victory as well, so that's what counts for his 2 TKO wins. Santos, as I said, he's training in Nova União, so they're an excellent camp, working with guys like Jose Aldo and Renan Barao and Hawker Diaz. These guys are very strong strikers, good wrestlers overall as well. I expect to see Santos making some significant strides. The Brazilian's also going to have a 5-inch reach and a 3-inch height advantage. He was having some success against Norman Park, who's a very good striker, but Santos had some success against Park being the busier fighter and using that length. He landed some decent strikes at range in that matchup. He's been working to improve his jab and low kicks, which appear to be his biggest weapons. For Escudero, again, he doesn't fare well against good grapplers, and fighting in Brazil won't help him either as far as that is concerned, especially if we go to the judges. I think Santos will need to make his grappling a factor. I think he'll have success there. Somehow gets this fight to the mat in a position where he can attack, and my prediction is Leonardo Santos to defeat Efrain Escudero by submission. And don't be shocked if we do go to a decision. It's a close, questionable decision win in Santos' favor. In the co-main event of the night, we're in the UFC's lightweight division, and it's a matchup with 2 fighters I very much like, but I just was a little bit shocked that they were getting the co-main event slot. Nonetheless, we have Brazilian Gleison Tibau with a record of 38-10-0, taking on Piotr Hallmann of Poland with a record of 15 wins and 2 losses. Now, Tibau has really become the ultimate gatekeeper, and I really don't like using that gatekeeper moniker, but Tibau is an example of one. He really decides who is upper echelon and who is not. His 4 losses that have come in his last 13 fights came against Michael Johnson, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Jim Miller, and Evan Dunham. Dunham of those 4 is the lowest ranked, and that's very impressive to say those are the 4 guys that have beat me, and see where they are now, with the exception of Dunham, who struggled a little bit. Tibau's 0-2 in Brazil since the UFC started going there, and he started fighting on those cards, defeating fellow Brazilian Francisco Trinaldo and John Chulish. He's 17-1 though in his career when fighting at home, which is very, very impressive. For Hallmann, he's coming off a win over a very solid veteran, Yves Edwards, which was submission. He also submitted the aforementioned Trinaldo, which was quite impressive as well, and he lost a very competitive fight against Al Iaquinta. Physically, Tibau's a massive lightweight that's well documented. He's one of the biggest in the business, which should give him a size and strength advantage. But for Hallmann, he's known for his durability. In that fight against Trinaldo, he was hurt to the body with a shot, was rallied back, and eventually submitted him when Trinaldo gassed out. He has 6 finishes beyond the first round, and that shows how good he is at breaking down his opponents and really forcing them to crumble. For Tibau, his size comes with a massive compromised cardio. He can get the job done, and the question is with him in a lot of fights, can he get the job done before he starts to slow down? And against guys like Evan Dunham and Khabib Nurmagomedov, he couldn't match their pressure and wasn't able to get going, and ultimately lost both those fights. Against Jamie Varner and Pat Healy, he faded in those fights, and I picked against him in both matchups, but he had done enough early on to win those matchups, especially in the Varner fight. It was a little bit controversial, but Healy clearly had won the first 2 rounds Tibau had. Big question, though, is, again, can he do enough against Piotr Hallmann to take a decision before he starts to slow down? Or can Hallmann push him hard enough to slow him down and outwork him and take all 3 rounds, or at least the second and third? You know what I'm saying? It's whatever comes first will decide this fight. On the feet, Hallmann holds a massive edge in strikes landed per minute, 4.51 to 1.93, but he also gets hit roughly at 1.5 times more than Tibau, so his defensive striking not nearly as strong as Gleison's. Tibau's striking has improved massively. I slightly favor the Hallmann in this matchup on the feet with his speed and volume, but when it comes right down to this fight's going to be decided on the mat. The ground game has been absolutely essential to the success of Hallmann so far. He submitted Yves Edwards, scored 4 takedowns in that matchup, 3 takedowns against Iaquinta, 2 takedowns against Francisco Trinaldo before submitting him, 7 submissions overall. He's got a very good ground game, solid ground and pound, good top position control. But for Tibau, he has some of the best takedown defense in the game, 92% takedown defense. He's won the takedown battle in 22 UFC fights. He has landed 77 takedowns compared to just 5 for his combined opponents. That is darn impressive. And I'd say Hallmann's going to be hard-pressed to score takedowns early in this fight, if at all. Even if Tibau slows down, he's still a wall to try and take off his feet. And what that does here is that turns a multifaceted fighter into a very one-dimensional fighter. If Hallmann can't land takedowns, he's simply a striker, and that takes that element out of the game. For Tibau, he still has both going for him. For Tibau, he's become very dominant with his takedowns and top game, which is pretty impressive. Very big, very strong, hard to stop. We saw him, ragdoll a very large lightweight in Pat Healy, and once he started stopping the feet with the takedowns, and he's even harder to get off when you're underneath him, and it makes him equally as dangerous for that takedown game. Hallmann's very scrappy, but he's going to struggle to keep Tibau off of him, and my prediction is Gleison Tibau to defeat Piotr Hallmann by decision. In the main event of the evening, we move to the UFC's heavyweight division as the number 4 ranked Antonio Bigfoot Silva, 18-5-0 with 1 no contest, battles the number 14th ranked Andrei the Pitbull Arlovski, former UFC champion, with a record of 22 wins, 10 losses, and no draws, 1 no contest. Both men actually were also Strikeforce Grand Prix competitors. This is the first fight when these guys met originally. It took place about 4 years ago at Strikeforce Heavy Artillery, which was headlined by Alistair Overeem, defeating Brett Rogers to retain his Strikeforce heavyweight title. Taking a look here, Silva won that matchup by unanimous decision. Many expected a knockout in that fight for Silva over Arlovski, as Andrei had lost the 2 fights coming into it by knockout and lost the subsequent match afterwards to Sergei Kharitonov by knockout, and it was really a tough time for Andrei. Silva in that fight outlanded Arlovski 47-30 in significant strikes. He also landed 2 takedowns, and Andrei wasn't able to take him down once. Since that matchup, though, Arlovski's gone 7-2-0 with 1 no contest compared to Silva, who's gone 4-3-0 with 1 no contest. So, obviously that would favor Andrei as far as the numbers are concerned, but upon further review, it's not quite that simple. Bigfoot has faced far superior competition this run. He's faced Cain Velasquez twice, including once for the title. He faced Daniel Cormier, and he beat guys like Fedor Emelianenko, Travis Brown, and Alistair Overeem, all very impressive. For Andrei Arlovski, his biggest win came out with Brendan Schaub, which was a stinker of a fight, most recently in his UFC return. He also beat Mike Kyle, who's really a natural light heavyweight. He beat several journeymen, and one of his losses during that run was to Anthony Rumble Johnson and the aforementioned Sergey Haritonov. In that first meeting, they stood and traded a lot. Silva was looking to catch him as he came in and was simply getting the better of the exchanges, landing more impactful strikes, landing the more frequent strikes, landing the more accurate strikes. Arlovski did not show enough movement, and as a result, he was continually getting hit. Arlovski tends to hold his hands too low, especially his left hand, which is something he'll need to tighten up here. And Bigfoot was also able to bully Andrei a lot into the cage. And that's something Andrei, if he can't bully guys and uses his grappling and his sambo, he's not nearly as effective. We saw Bigfoot use a very sloppy single leg to put Arlovski on his back. He punched his way into the guard, very effective there. For Andrei to be successful and to make up for that matchup, he needs to use his speed and his footwork more effectively. And it's something we're seeing from him. A lot more movement, a lot more kicks to try and pot shot Bigfoot and be a moving target. Bigfoot just needs to use more of the same. Big, powerful shots, land accurate combinations, bullying him into the cage and just outwork him. Arlovski looked very tentative in his return. He should be better this time around, but the question is against Bigfoot, who's a better fighter, I think, than Brendan Schaub, as far as I'm concerned. How effective will Andrei be? Both guys have known chin issues. Arlovski 7 losses by KO, Bigfoot 4. But again, upon further review, Bigfoot's came against Kane twice. One was a clear knockout, one was a knockout because of the blood. He couldn't defend himself. And against Daniel Cormier, two of the best heavyweights on the planet. And he also had one early in his career. And he was coming off a war with Mark Hunt where he took some very big shots and hung in there, and eventually a draw, then a no contest. For Arlovski, he was knocked out by Brett Rogers when Rogers was at the peak of his career. That's not a good thing. Silva's coming off suspension and a lengthy break, plus no more testosterone replacement therapy, so I wonder how much that affects him. He will be fighting at home, which should help him here. Arlovski has had the bigger drop-off, I think, in capabilities and execution over his career. Bigfoot, he's not at the peak of his career, but I certainly think he's still closer to his prime than Andrei is. I'm sure Andrei has the ability to sting Bigfoot with some big shots. He could stop him if he lands something big, but I just don't see him landing enough or more frequent enough to win this fight. I think Bigfoot lands the more impactful strikes, the more significant strikes. I think he does what many people expect him to in the first fight. So my prediction is Antonio Bigfoot Silva to defeat Andrei Arlovski by knockout. So those are my 6 main card predictions for UFC Fight Night 51, again, which will air on Fight Pass. All my preliminary predictions will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net, which I will be feverishly working to update and get the bet packs and everything else rolling. We've got a ton of fights coming up ahead of us, so I will do my best to keep up. But I have a bunch of significant things outside of the MMA world that are happening in my life, so if I miss an event, I apologize. And I fully encourage you to tune in or head to kamikazeoverdrive.net nonetheless to check out the prediction panel, as I have some very awesome predictors there that are breaking down the fights and will give you their insight if I am unable to provide mine. I just realized, looking at this card, I have predicted all 6 winners to be Brazilian. It's something I've been tentative to do in the past, and usually comes out to bite me. It seems like when I pick against the home guys, even in the China event against less noteworthy Chinese-based fighters, picking up wins over guys I surely thought were going to take care of them in those matchups. It seems like they get some edge from fighting at home, regardless of the UFC. At least sets fights up for them to win to try and build those markets. So I'm picking all 6 Brazilian guys here. I should have a good card. We'll see if that pans out. This could be the first Brazilian card where the locals go 0-6 on the main card. Either way, thanks for tuning in as always, guys, and I will talk to you not too far from now. We got to get ready for the next event. Thanks, guys, for listening.